I know some people in this room and maybe listening on television or watching online or whatever may have been aware there's a very, very public face to this. It was a person who actually passed away from this terrible disease by the name of Bernie Banton, and you actually were a friend of Bernie's.
Yeah, I knew Bernie, and a very close friend of his widow, Karen. In fact, I'm a founding director of the Bernie Banton Foundation. Interestingly, Bernie and Karen are Christians. And it's always a mystery to people. He's a guy who's out there fighting for the rights of people who have got asbestos-induced diseases, and boom, like lightning, he gets mesothelioma and dies. He's a Christian man. How can God let this happen? But yeah, fabulous people.
We were chatting earlier that we've got a mutual friend, and this disease has touched many people in many ways, directly and indirectly. One of them was a friend of mine and of Bruce's, a guy by the name of Dr. Graham Johnston. He was the senior minister of Subiaco Church of Christ, which is a fantastic church here in the city of Perth, Western Australia. And I still remember the day I was having coffee with Graham, and at the time I was with another good friend of mine, in fact the predecessor as senior minister in this church, Phil Baker. And Phil Baker was still in recovery and still is recovering, but he was coming out of a very big health challenge himself. And the three of us were thinking he was the sickest person there, but none of us knew that Graham actually at that point was the sickest person, because as we're having coffee, Graham's sitting to my right and he kept sort of moving his left shoulder like this. And eventually I said, "What's the matter?" And he goes, "I've done something to my left shoulder. It's really sore. I'm getting it scanned this week." And I remember a little bit later on he rang me to tell me what had happened. They'd scanned the shoulder, and the scan had actually cut across a bit of his left lung. And then when they were looking at it, they looked at the structure of the shoulder, and the shoulder looked fine. And then the doctor looked down at his lung and sort of put his finger and said, "What's that?" And that's where it all started. And in the end, Bruce, you were actually directly involved in what happened then.
Yeah, I actually was the one that had to organise the biopsy and actually had to break the bad news to Graham and to Tracy that he only had about 6 months to live. And this is, this is a mystery to people. You know, you had these two wonderful pastors, Phil Baker here and Graham Johnson in Subiaco, pastors, wonderfully gifted young men, both stricken with severe illnesses. How can God allow this to happen? It seemed almost amazing, Hayden, that it was happening at the same time. You know, like God was saying, "Hey, it's not all about you. There's a mystery to this." But yeah, to sit there and break the bad news to Graham, as it is one of my jobs. I mean, I'm a lung specialist, and a lot of people get lung cancer and mesothelioma, and I have to sit there and break the bad news to men and women, often with their partner sitting with them, holding hands and crying. It's a very poignant part of my life.
Have you found that what's the best approach in doing something as tough as that?
Yeah, I don't think I did a very good job of this when I was a young consultant. In fact, I know I didn't do a good job of it as a young consultant, and nor do a lot of doctors. So I read up about it and learned about it. The key things are to be clear, to make sure you create a space and time. Don't tell them over the phone or on a ward round. Use body language that's kind, eye level, and hold their hand or whatever, and be clear about it. Ask them what they want to know. Ask them what they want to know rather than deciding what they want to know. But in all of this, it's crucial to be moved with compassion, to speak with compassion and to be moved with compassion. I mean, people dying of cancer can get the bad news in bad ways. I mean, people here may have even experienced that themselves, and it can create a lot of bitterness. But I think a doctor has a responsibility, but also a privilege of being invited into people's inner sanctum and to break the bad news well, and then to carry on the journey of, I shouldn't say journey of life, it's the journey to death of people, and to essentially hold their hand and walk that journey with them is a quite a profound privilege. And there's a way to do that part of it well, as also so that they die well, and there's a way to do it badly, so they die lonely or bitter.
I know at one stage you would often sometimes mention to them, because sometimes the time it may take would differ. Could be 3 months, could be 12.
Yeah, so I have a very direct approach about this, which I'll tell you about, because you might find it helpful. People feel pretty uncomfortable talking about dying, and they feel pretty uncomfortable with someone who's dying. And often people who are dying, they don't have any visitors at home because people are so uncomfortable they don't call in. I'm different. I'm quite direct. So I have a phrase that I use, and it says, plan for the worst, but hope for the best. So if it's 3 months or 12 months, I say, by all means, hope for the 12 months. Or even a miracle. God can do miracles, you know. But we all know that he doesn't normally, so in that situation. But hope for the 12 months. But here's the thing, and this is the liberating thing. Plan for the worst. Plan for the 3 months. What does that mean? If you and your wife have always wanted to go to Paris now. And here's the thing, you've got a couple of teenage daughters. Write a letter to them. Write a letter telling them about how wonderful they are and your hopes and dreams and aspirations for them. You know, you're not going to walk them down the aisle.
Amazing.
So once people do this, I mean, their tears fall on the page. But it liberates them. It liberates them. From then on, they are liberated, and every day is a gift. The sky is bluer than they've ever noticed before, and the leaves on the trees are greener. They've never noticed that before, and every day is a gift. So in the process of showing compassion, which I feel is the compassion of Jesus in my heart, it's wonderful to see how you can help people on that journey to death. I mean, we're all going to die, and we've all got loved ones, and it is the most intimate, touching thing that I do in my work. And people say it must be awful, and I say no, it's actually a privilege and an honour to be with people on that journey.